Hello. Welcome to my bed. How are you? For those who are just like listening on audio, I'm going to fight with my positioning for the camera because this podcast is like going to be everywhere, visual and audio formats. That being said, welcome to the podcast. My name is Dana and I'm your favorite Zimbabwean girly. I chose to start a podcast because I wanted to really tap into the fact that we're grown-ups / we're still growing up. And the reason why I titled it This Is Why I Journal is because, in all honesty, my journal keeps me sane. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this podcast are actually based on my own journal entries and said prompts. The podcast is really because being grown up is weird and I have feelings and a mic. Anywhom, a couple of disclaimers before we start, and just to set the tone for this podcast as a whole. Number one, work in progress. Second of all, this is a scripted podcast, so those who are watching on YouTube, please bear with me. I did write down what I'm going to be saying because I took it out of my diary, then I had to format it in a way that I'm comfortable for the public to hear. And that way, like, my rambles make sense because I talk to my diary like... I can't even say like my best friend because even my best friend, I be shy with some stuff. I know she'll cancel me for it. Anyway, I think those are my disclaimers. I think another one is for those watching on video as well, please bear with me for like video quality. I am using my Sony ZV-E10, but I'm using the streaming function and I'm using the USB, not an HDMI. We're still figuring that out. What the hell? Alrighty, so now let's get into it. This is why I journal. Growing up can be like messy, right? Growing up can be messy, but it can be magical. It has quite a few, not even a few, a lot of delusional parts, to be honest. And like, it is just weird. Today's topic, though, is the soft launching of our inner children, because healing is a real thing. And in this day and age, it can be glamorized so much that we forget at core what it's meant to do, how it's meant to be done. And this episode is going to be, like a little emotional soft launch for us to reparent our younger selves. Not from the perspective of like fixing our younger selves, but being able to sit with, to listen to honor, and to see and hear our inner children. Therefore, if you're on the go or you're at home, just grab yourself a cozy little blanket, little drinky drink, like a candle if you're feeling extra. And let's talk about the kind of healing that doesn't make it to the Pinterest boards. The kind that starts in your gut. The kind that whispers, I still need something here. I think to start, I'll give a personal anecdote. This is called the teddy bear juice trauma. Stay with me. I was like in primary school, and it was like junior primary school, so like 8 years old, 9 years old. And at the end of school, I got home. For context though, I'm Zimbabwean, grew up in Zimbabwe, and we had this juice. It came in plastic packaging that was in the shape of, I remember distinctly, a teddy bear and a phone. And what happened was, like, it had this little, like, it had the teddy bear or phone. For those who are watching, you can see what I'm doing. And then it had like a straw attached to it, so you just cut the top and then you drink it. Came in like red, blue, green, like a ton of colors. I can't remember accurately. It was years ago. But I still remember this incident. I used to love those things. Now back to the story. I'm like in like the junior ends of primary school, so like 7, 8, 9, somewhere there. Still a kid. I get home. Bear in mind, whenever I'd come back from like primary school, I thought I came back from a long day of toiling the field. My goodness. You could not tell me I didn't come back home from a 9 to 5 and therefore I deserved foot rubs and to be hand-fed salsa. Anyway, so I'm home. I get home and still wearing that uniform, that damn dress. If you know me, and you know me since like primary school, you know exactly which dress I'm referring to. Yeah, carrying on. I was still in that damn dress, and the first thing I did was go to the fridge. My heart was set on that drink. I get to the fridge excited for like, you know, my after a hard day worth of hard work. Shoo, English just said mchew. And to think my mother sent me to Jizzy and Falcon later on, she would be slapping me. Anyway, yeah, so I go to the fridge thinking, yeah, I earned this, you know, like I earned this, it's mine. Excited, jittering even, and like, I opened the door. For my Lilka juice, and do you know what? That one flavor that I thought it wasn't even the one flavor, like there were none. Like I opened the fridge and they're all gone. So now I'm thinking, I kept on opening and closing the fridge door as if like maybe on the third, fourth try they'll like magically appear, and I was the one who was hallucinating them not being there. However, the truth of the matter of the fact was somebody drank all of them, left me none. No one even saved me one, like not even one. And I just stood there once I'd finished my opening and closing episodes. And guys, my eyes, I wanted to cry. And I remember our helper at the time, I think she heard the fridge opening, because our fridge used to go ding, ding, like sing a little song whenever it opened, so they know you opened the fridge. And she kept hearing it go off, so she came to be like, this Dej caught me. Sorry, Dej is like slang for hun or girl. Yeah, if you listen to this podcast, you're going to learn a lot of some slang. But this Dej basically like caught me teary-eyed staring at the fridge, and she's like, "Oh, are you G?" And I was like, "Damn." So at that point, I can't remember what then happened, but I think she was kind of laughing because to her it was like, it's just juice. But to me, it was like, damn, nobody, not even one for me. You know, I was looking into that cold fridge, that fluorescent lit void, like nobody thought of me. And I mean, I understand our helper at the time laughing, because even now it sounds dramatic, right? It does. I know it sounds dramatic, but in that moment, it actually wasn't just about the juice when you clock it. It was about being remembered. I wanted to feel remembered. I wanted to be thought of. I wanted to feel like someone out there had saved me a seat. Or in this case, a teddy bear. Or like one of the little juice pouches. And I'm 24 now. 23, but 24 this year. I still feel that ache from time to time, to be so real. Like, I'll walk into a room, a relationship, a group chat, and silently wonder, you know, who's thinking of me? Or like, does anyone remember me and things? Like, that type of stuff. Like, am I being considered? Am I being, I guess, chosen? Pick me, stand down. Stand down. No. Because I can see how that's going to be misconstrued. This is not a pick me support system, nor as we go into it, you will figure out like what I'm referring to here. Back to it, it wasn't about the juice. And in hindsight, it was emotional scarcity. And that's where we're starting today. Let's look at reparenting, because that's another thing that comes up with healing your inner child. You know, that's how you heal your inner child. And I want to start by talking about the TikTokification of it all, you know, because there's been a rise or like a virality or popularity in this aesthetic version of healing. Soft lighting, you know, the lavender or like cocoa body butter, journaling in like a matching pink silk pajama set with a jade roller and a face mask on deck, da. And don't get me wrong, that vibe is immaculate. I won't even, the ambiance, I love it to bits, but that's not all healing's about. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's call a cat a cat. That's not the whole picture. Real healing, the actual reparenting it's messier. It's way, way messier. There's so much confronting, and you end up crying at 2 a.m. because you realize you've been begging for breadcrumbs in a lot of situations and relationships, etc. It's about sitting with a younger version of yourself, your inner child, your child self, who's still waiting to be rescued, but the only person who can actually rescue this child is you. Clock it. With reparenting, it's also about becoming the adult you need. When I first heard reparenting, actually, I thought it was like treating yourself like a baby. Like, I'm just a baby. Bubble baths, cartoons, cookies for dinner. And sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, that is actually the medicine. That is what you need to do. But there's still work to be done. It's deeper than that. Reparenting is becoming the adult you needed when you were most confused, scared, or emotionally abandoned. It's being the person who says, hey, you're safe now, like you can rest. Or no, you don't have to tolerate being ignored by anyone anymore. Or we don't chase people who make us feel invisible. We walk away. It's building that safety our inner child doesn't have or didn't have, setting the structure, practicing softness. And yeah, that sometimes means enforcing boundaries that make your voice shake, especially when it comes to a lot of loved people. I feel like that's your boundaries can be hurtful or like feel painful. It's really the quiet parenting moments, like reminding yourself that it's okay to eat when you're hungry and nap when you're tired. You're not lazy. You're actually nurturing a nervous system that's never felt safe. So you need to just be. If that makes sense, to kind of like make this a little more relevant, we're going to talk about like the pop culture mirrors of this. And I think a good place to start is Barbie, the 2023 movie, And I'm not gonna lie, I actually fought watching this movie. I did not want to watch it. My goodness. Peer pressure then hit me though. And maybe I did. Because it opened my eyes, and seemingly by judging tweets on Twitter or X, that one, and Reddit threads, I wasn't the only one who was touched or moved, even though for a lot of people it was like, it's just a movie about a doll. It's deeper than that, sweetie. It's deeper than that. Because like, think about the monologue by America Ferrera, the contradictions, the double standards. It was inner child rage in a glittery wrapper. It was every little girl who was told to be perfect but humble, smart but not too smart, so she ended up being threatening. Soft but never too emotional, like don't do too much. Don't be a drama queen. And that wasn't just about being a woman, that was about grieving the rules we grew up trying to follow. And another one is like Inside Out. Don't get me started. Pixar had no business making a kids movie that emotionally intelligent. Like, I only clocked it as a grown-up. Sadness wasn't the villain. She actually was the bridge. Clock it. The whole message, to me at least, was that you can't bypass grief. You can't avoid pain. You have to feel it. So you actually have to feel it. Sorry, baby. And a more like recent, I think more pop culture-y and not really like movie entertainment example, Tumblr. One day we're going to unpack the chaos that was that Tumblr era. Because, all those like sad girl posts that we used to reblog in our early teens, that wasn't quirky. That was a coping mechanism. My goodness. We romanticized loneliness and said romanticized loneliness was us trying to survive what we actually didn't have the language to express at that time. We didn't really want attention. We actually wanted safety. When you look at it, and sure, I'm actually just like thinking about the reblogs I used to. Oh, girl. But anyway, like there's actually quite a bit of science behind journaling and inner child work. Sorry, I need to check what's going on in my laptop here because this will stop filming and that would be very embarrassing. Anyway, back to the plot. yeah, the science behind like journaling and inner child work, as I mentioned before, because of like social media and TikTok, we have glamorized and romanticized, aestheticized, if that's even a word, the work. At core, it's not just vibes and vibes alone. And yeah, there is science to back it up. Allow me to be a nerd. Expressive writing. Journaling your thoughts, raw and unfiltered, has been shown to reduce anxiety. Anxiety. Yeah, I'm trying to, act tough, but I'm actually nervous as all right now. Anxiety, improve emotional clarity, and like boost immune function. I am not a doctor or a medical professional. I'm just going by what studies say. And even then, like, just please don't then do something and be like, Tina said this on their podcast. Girl, I will deny you so fast. I'm joking. Not joking. Anyway, a 2021 study from the University of Rochester Medical Center found that journaling can improve emotional regulation and decrease depressive symptoms in teens and young adults. So, judging by that study, yeah, this stuff works. This stuff does work. And when you journal to your younger self, that's when it hits deepest. Because when you think about it, journaling about what's going on in adulthood, it's easy because you're viewing it in the lens of being a grown-up. But when you're addressing your inner child, there's so many feelings that come up. And it takes you down a very, sometimes dark rabbit hole of emotions, memories you try to repress. It's not a very nice thing sometimes. And it's triggering. It's that moment when like you tell your inner child, I'm proud of you because you didn't hear that enough growing up. That's all you wanted to hear growing up and you didn't hear it. Telling your inner child when something happened, or like when you think of a memory, like, hey kid, you actually didn't deserve that, simply because in that moment, in that memory, you were told you were being extra, or what did you expect, or something was normalized that shouldn't be normal, and you thought, yeah, I had it coming the whole time. You actually didn't deserve that as a kid. Or certain memories where as a child you were held to adult standards, so now as an adult you're looking back and saying to your inner self, your inner child self, like, you were actually just a kid. When you do this, you're rewriting the story. You can't rewrite it in history, in the physicality, or in the physical sense, but you can rewire the memory. You can shift the memory, not so much to erase it, but to hold it differently, with more compassion, with grace, and with the truth adulthood gave you about that childhood situation. I started with that little anecdote about my teddy bear juice trauma, and I mentioned emotional scarcity, and it was emotional scarcity in disguise. So let's circle back to that, because again, it wasn't actually about the juice. It was about the emotional scarcity, the idea that there's never enough love, care, or attention to go around, that if I don't grab it first, someone else will, and I'll be left with nothing. That grab it before it's gone panic, it still lives in my chest sometimes. I'll be honest about it. It still lives in my chest. Examples being like when a text goes unanswered, or someone cancels plans last minute. My brain doesn't just say it's no big deal. It actually says, they're forgetting you again, you're being forgotten again. Then I tell myself it's no big deal to calm down my brain. If you see how that then works in my head. And when you think about it, that you're being forgotten again, that's my inner child speaking. And until we meet our inner children where they are, we're going to keep repeating those patterns. We need to go back, because reparenting, it's recognizing the pattern and its root, and choosing something new, choosing to self-soothe, and choosing yourself. You need to, again, recognize, especially the memory and the emotion, reparent it, so that you can choose a different path, a different reaction as a grown-up. And another like trope that came from this, I'd say, is the chill girl. That whole myth of being a chill girl, a cool girl, you know, the easygoing babe, right? I'm gonna drag myself here. This is a very big self-drag because I tried to be that cool girl, that chill girl, for years. You know, the easygoing babe. You know, let me not say low maintenance because debatable and situational. You know, unbothered, quietly agreeable, the one who didn't really need anything but gave everything, if that makes sense. In all honesty to myself and to you now, that was a performance, a role I learned to play because my inner child believed she had to earn love by being easier to handle. Or easier, just in general, just being easy, right? Not in the adult sense, get your minds out the gutter, now. By being small, by not rocking the boat. And the truth is that chill girl is just a little girl who was punished for having feelings. Reparenting is telling her, you can be loud, you can be needy, you can be soft and spicy and confused. You don't have to apologize for existing, you know. And that whole chill girl thing, it's something that I'm deconstructing in adulthood. Because in some situations I do find myself shrinking smaller because I feel in order to like earn love or attention or affection or whatever, not just with boyfriends or just in a general sense, I have to be easygoing. They have to want to love me because loving is not a hassle. If that makes sense. And now in a broader sense, we can look at like how to actually start reparenting yourself. And to do this, we have to break it down without overcomplicating it, because it can get rather complex depending on you and your situation. Reparenting doesn't have a template or like a one-size-fits-all approach because we all went through different things. Even if we went through similar, it was never to the T, because we're all our own people. So like how I started, and this is how you can start too if you want to, is with the following, and you can read them out loud. You can write them down if you have the time. You can come back to this part of the podcast when you need a reset or you need them. One is to write letters to your younger self, not as her critic. You can choose to write letters to your younger self as her best friend, as the sister you never had, someone of affection, not of critique. You know, the second one is a bit of a weird one, a bit odd, but set a bedtime. It seems a little bit like weird, bedtime. Give your nervous system the routine it never had, in the way it never had it. Another one is like to eat nostalgic snacks without guilt, because nostalgia can actually be medicine as well. Sometimes you need to reconnect with the good memories to remember that, hey, it wasn't all like trauma, you know, healing inner child. Sometimes it's also celebrating the happy moments with your inner child. You know, it's not always about the trauma or like the bad experiences. And another thing is like when you mess up, instead of saying I'm stupid or like I'm a ditz or I'm a klutz, allow yourself to say I'm learning, or you know what, it was a learning curve, let me like go back to the drawing board, come back stronger next time. Building rituals is another one. Soft, small, consistent, that feel like safety. It's not about like doing a complete rehaul, like overhaul. I think overhaul is a better word, of your life, but just like finding small ways to just like, you know, restructure, you know, sleep a little bit. And another crucial one is to protect your peace like you would protect a child's peace, right? If a child is sleeping, are you going to, if somebody dares to breathe a decibel too loud, you're gonna smack them, be like, if you dare wake up the child, right? Because at the end of the day, you're still that child at heart, and you're still carrying her. You will carry your inner child for the rest of your life. And I guess above all, you need to remember that you're not being dramatic, ever. I had to take a little break there because we had a bit of a technical difficulty, so if the cut is a little bit cutty, I'm sorry. Carrying on, I was saying, like, you're not being dramatic, like, ever, and in all honesty, you're just being tender with a part of you that never got the chance to feel safe. Like, you never got the chance to feel safe or secure, and it's not a weakness, right? Being tender with that part of you, it's actually not a weakness, it's courage when you think about it. And to go into like journal prompt reflection, more of this came out of my diary, and I tried to apply it in a way that you can use it as well. This is not like exactly how I journal, because again, I'm very sporadic with that in terms of like the structure, but I'm going to give a prompt and we're going to go through it together. If you want to take out a paper and pen, if you can, otherwise you can do it mentally. You come back to this particular part if you want to. Why don't you want to? Anyway, the prompt for reflection today is, what did your younger self crave that you still do? Take a deep breath there. Something that you crave that you still crave. You know, what did your younger self crave that you still do? We're not talking about like candy here. It's not candy. It's not dolls. It's the emotional craving. It's the ache. What are you like? I was about to say yearning, but that's a little bit of a stretch. It's like the thing you didn't have the language to name, but still feel in your chest every time you're... Not me struggling to sit out. Still feel in your chest like every time you're overlooked, you're misunderstood, or too tired to explain why you feel off. Because we have those days, guys, where you just can't. Whether it's like explain or anything of the sort, like what's happening, why you feel off. And as you reflect or like think about this problem, like don't try and answer it perfectly. Don't rush to like be profound or like so deep. Just let the question settle. Let it settle. And I mean, I can go first / with you, because when I did this one, it did crack me open when I first did it. And I craved, still low-key do, being chosen. Someone saving me a seat. That's something that's simple, of being thought of first, of someone saying, oh wait, let me actually, like, where's Dana? Or like, oh wait, let me make sure Dana's a part of it, you know? I used to, and I actually still do, wait to be invited. I never just go anywhere. Even with friends, they know that my house you can come by, although if you come by, let's take that with a grain of salt, because by that same token, don't just come to my house. Because I'm the type to really be sitting in my mother's house eating her food. Someone's down by the gate and I will tell you that I'm in Sudan. Please don't play with me. That's beside the point, though. I'm going on another tangent. See why I scripted. Anyway, we're on the point of like waiting to be invited and everything. And as mentioned, it's not just like parties type thing. Sometimes it's to conversations, to emotions, to soft moments. I never, and I still never, barge in. In the beginning of my childhood, I think I used to, but again, my inner child went through a lot where I unlearned that so fast. I waited, and I'd wait at that emotional door, hoping someone would like notice me, someone would wave me and be like, hey, to the left, or like, the way I say to the left, I pointed to the right is disgusting. My grandmother looking at me like, eh. Anyway, but yeah, the point of like waiting for someone to open that emotional door, to notice me, wave me in, say, hey, come be part of it. And thing is, like, when they didn't, I would shrink so much. I learned early that if I made myself smaller, that the disappointment of not being considered or chosen or like remembered would hurt less. The kicker is, like, as I mentioned, I still do that to this day. I'm working on it. I'm better at not doing that all the time. But there will be times when I still wait for people to prove, or like to reassure that I matter, before I let myself believe it. I'm not one. If someone says, I think about you all the time, I'm like, like, why are you lying? And in that waiting for people to like kind of like prove that I matter before I believe it myself, it's like you're waiting for them to show up, and when they don't show up, it hurts. And a lot of the time, it's my inner child throwing, I say, a quiet tantrum. It's not a loud one. It's a quiet one. It's just the silent grief in my chest. And I know grief is a very heavy word. However, in some cases, it's not just a sadness. It's not anything light, considering that it's your inner child. It's your as in the you that formed you now, And, that grief hurts. Yeah, like a really deep ache at the fact that you're an afterthought. That hurts. Even like, not gonna lie, inviting people to things. I'm a believer of, if you wanted them there, you'd have invited them in the first round. Sue me. For example, let's say I'm having a party. I invite Sarah, Julie, Kate. Right, that's why I invite to the party. I have another friend, Emma, who I don't invite. Kate is now sick, so I'm like, can you guys tell Emma to come? If I was Emma, I would actually say, well, hold on, like, this thing has been in the plot for like weeks, and you're only telling me the day before because, as you will then discover, someone else couldn't come. So it means you didn't have me in your first draft of who you wanted. They didn't think of me then. And it can sound like a bit of entitlement of like, at least you got the invite. Yeah, but like, what are you communicating to me? Subliminally. I think that's why, like, for me, when I get a second-hand invite or a courtesy invite or a last-minute invite, I tend to think once, twice, 3 times. Because again, if the guest list knew for weeks, it means they had time to prepare. They had time to get their things together. Let's say it's a birthday party. Tell me the day before. Now I must rush to get you like a gift and an outfit. Like, it also shows a lack of consideration for you, if that makes sense. But let's go back to the topic of like that whole. That came from being the whole ache of being an afterthought. Then I went on the tangent of afterthoughtness. I crave safety. Not just physically, but emotional safety is something that we tend to, especially as adults, not realize we needed as children. As an adult, and something that I did from childhood, is because I didn't feel completely emotionally safe, tone shifts used to affect me so much. They still do. I analyze tones real hard. And you find, because sometimes you can be saying one thing, but your tone will tell me you're meaning a completely different thing here, And tone shifts, I flinch because I'm like, that didn't feel nice. Raised voices was another one. Depending on the situation though, because sometimes I do be yelling, I'm not gonna lie. And yeah, like, even non-verbal cues like sighs. A heavy sigh could actually make me feel like, oh, okay, because then you feel like I really disappointed someone. And pinnacle of this is becoming someone hyper aware, hyper responsive, hyper responsible. I learned to scan any room for danger, emotional danger, that is, before entering. It's a very bad thing. It restricts my living so much. 'Cause as an adult, I now crave spaces where I don't have to be the emotional babysitter or the person requiring an emotional babysitter. You know, where I can like relax without managing everyone else's mood or having to manage how I react to everyone else's mood. You know, spaces where I don't have to constantly decode, like, am I safe or am I in trouble? I just crave spaces where I like walk in and I just feel safe. I'm not worrying about over analyzing tones or like paying attention to body language and nonverbal cues. You know, like, and it's hard because then it ties now into my being very antisocial and an introvert. Most people don't know that I'm an introvert. People think I'm an extrovert simply because I can come off as, you know, very silly, very friendly, not realizing that that's a front. I'm telling you now, guys, that's a very big front. I'm very introverted at heart, and you find sometimes I'm extroverted so that you don't have a curiosity about me, and you won't then now come trying to find out about me because you thought, she's just a silly goose. She cracks jokes. She's like, hee, and not realizing that I'm actually a very grown person at heart. Anyway, I think having to grow up fast is another topic I'll add. I'll have to go through my diary and see where that was. But anyway, back to it. Another thing I craved was softness without conditions, though. Right? Ethnic children, stand up. I'm not saying if you're not of an ethnic identity, so whether that's an African tribal culture, because Africans are a monolith, we're not just one culture, we all have our different norms, or an Asian or Pacific Islander, like ethnic, if I can use that. Children, we can stand up for this one because I'm sure most of us can relate to the fact that crying was not a really big norm in our households. It's a thing that with time and changing our parenting methods is being worked on. But, you know, with other kids, you know, if the child is crying, you know, the parent's like, what's wrong? They try and find out. You get told, you better stop crying before I give you something to cry about. That actually invalidates you, because you actually could, as a child, it could be very valid thing you're crying about in the sense of a child, but to an adult, it's not valid to them. And in crying as a child, I wanted to be loved. Right? I feel like my mom did a really good job at trying. However, I think also me, I was, guys, I'm a very emotional person. Again, because of that whole hyper aware, I overthink and overanalyze, I'm more sensitive, and now I've built this whole like a bit of a wall system, if that makes sense. So I'm not crying all the time. Not really healthy, but it's being worked on. But again, back to it, I wanted to be like loved while I was crying, and not really like being loved on after I pulled myself together. Because clock it, when you go through something, when you're crying, you get a lot of responses that can be get it together or get up or so and so has it worse. And it's only like when you pull yourself together or when you fixed your tone, or, you know, said sorry for the emotional outburst, and people are like, you know, but you're so strong. It's like, okay, but like, where was this comforting voice when I was actually going through it? Because you're telling me I'm strong, not I do by myself. Where were you? You know? I wanted to also like be loved in my mess, my mental mess, because that was another one. In my states of confusion, in my whiny, bratty, hormonal, when it came to like the teenage and chaotic humanness, I'm not saying I should have been babied in time I was being like an absolute brat, but some of it you think about it and you're like, if I maybe been like hit with some love or a softer reaction, I might have developed a different relationship with that as an adult, you know. Yeah. And the wild thing is that I do still crave that, you know. I crave comfort that doesn't require me to be palatable, to be digestible, I just want to cry, and if it means ugly crying to the point where my neighbors come down and they're like, hello, what's going on? When they call my mom to be like, there's someone wailing in your house, I don't want the cry that's like euphoria tears aesthetic cry, because that's the only thing that's acceptable. And like, more moments though, now that, like, as we go through it, I'm looking at what I've written down here. Just list a little thing. This is called like the birthday party test. Question: have you ever thought about what your childhood birthdays say about your like inner world? Because I do. And I remember one of my birthdays, I planned it on my own, right? Making lists. I remember this is before like the whole Pinterest mood boarding, what, so you actually used to like list things. And yes, Pinterest came, but it wasn't at the point of like where it is now, if that makes sense. You're making a list, organizing cupcakes, seating charts, da-da-da-da-da. Who do I want there? You don't have that list written, my party, like on a piece of paper. And, I'd want to be like the best host. I didn't want to be like disappointed, so I then took control of the whole thing. I said, let me do it myself. Would some of these things didn't they materialize, FYI? But now, as a grown up, like, it's, if no one makes a big deal out of my birthday, obviously I think it's depending on who that person is. To me, I'll say I'm fine, that's fine, but I do spiral. I mean, because not because I'm shallow, but again, it ties into that whole craving of, am I worthy of being celebrated just for existing? And with the birthday party thing, I planned it myself simply so that like I'm not underwhelmed, if that makes sense. This may sound like it's rooted in being entitled, but it's really tied to a lot of things we go through now as grown-ups. That whole, am I worth this existing? Because I remember as a kid, it wasn't about the grand gesture element of the party, but the thought behind it. For me, someone could have had like a huge party, but like, let's say they like chocolate and they got a vanilla cake. So it's like, okay, the little things. I guess it's like that whole being thoughtfulness, being thought about. And birthdays is little things. Like, again, I don't hold everyone to the same standard here, because different people have different sets of rules in my life. That sounds gross, but yeah. However, if it's someone who I have so much love and care for, a birthday is a big thing for me, because I'm like, we're celebrating your life, And a lot of people don't think birthdays are big, but to me, they're actually a big thing. We are literally celebrating your life. And the lack of that for me, again, ties into, am I worthy of being celebrated just for existing? Or do I need to actually now do something big, something bold? Beyonce. Sorry, if you know that TikTok, you know what? To be celebrated. And then I think we can now tap into the trap of praise versus attention. I had to grow up fast as a kid. I grew up very fast, so I had a childhood, but emotionally, it low-key wasn't much of a childhood. Of which it's not like to like slander anyone, but circumstance. Sorry, my camera hit something. Circumstance. And as I got older, due to the fact that I had to grow up quickly, I was praised for being mature, for handling things well, for not needing much. Even though I would have crash out moments, as my inner child would be fighting my more teen stuff. I think it came out more in my teenhood, where that me that handles things well and doesn't need much is now fighting the inner child who's saying, hey, hello, and not there at all. But anyway, yeah. In teen years, I was praised for being mature, quote unquote, handling things well, not eating too much. And in reality, what I actually wanted just was to be a kid, to go back to my childhood years and just be a kid, you know? Do kid things. I think another thing that hit my generation a lot is like the entrance of social media. So you find if you weren't adultified at home by virtue of just being an ethnic daughter, because a lot of firstborn daughters in general, in not just African but like ethnic households, we actually have to be grown from the time we're born. We're conditioned to grow up fast, you know. From a very early on in our life, we're told if you keep doing this, you're going to be a wife. Yeah. And that whole adultification ties back to sometimes we actually just wanted to be a kid because we didn't have that, the being kid by the true sense of the word. In adulthood now, I catch myself overperforming, whether it's at work, friendships, relationships, situations, like even in my own healing. I will chase like the gold stars when I just want the simplicity of being held, and not for doing something or, you know, flipping backwards, doing backflips, but just for being. I'm going to make an episode specifically for ethnic daughters because I feel like there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot of it. And carrying on, I know I'm not the only person who is fixed on hyper independence. You know, that whole I'll handle it myself mentality. Being like the girl who like doesn't need help, you know, the strong one, the reliable one, It wasn't then and still isn't now a flex. It's survival mode, if that makes sense. You know, I wasn't born wanting to do everything alone, but I learned that it was safer to do that than asking for help and being disappointed or hurt by the response I got, especially as a kid. You know, my inner child didn't crave independence. She craved support. She wanted to know someone would show up, someone would support even the looniest of ideas in her head. You know, she wanted to know that people backed her up, and not because like she did backflips or she had to earn it, but just because. That's why I don't have kids and would love to have them one day if the Lord wills. However, by that virtue, I can't judge parents because I'm not one myself. However, from my perspective as someone who was a child, as we all were, humor your children, or like humor children in general, even if it's not yours, like maybe it's your niece or like a child you see. Humor your child, because you're not going to know how it's going to manifest as she gets older. And humor your child doesn't mean take everything and just but sometimes humor them. An example, this is an unscripted example of this, is recently there was a story about a child who complained to her nanny about monsters under the bed. Right. In that situation, I remember I was reading this, you know, this kid basically to the nanny, there's monsters under the bed, monsters under the bed, monsters under the bed. The nanny, instead of saying, no, there isn't, it's all a bad dream, or like, think about good things and they'll go away, and walking out, the nanny, to try and prove to the child that there's no monsters under your bed, she checks under the bed. Do you know what she finds under the bed? A grown man. A grown man was under this kid's bed. So anyway, like they had a scuffle, and the man, I think, ended up trying to like take the child. I don't know what happened there, but he was then arrested. But it draws back to that child and humoring children, because if the nanny didn't try to look under the bed to disprove, they wouldn't have seen that man, and we'd we may have been speaking a different story. We're grateful for that, so that now that child is safe, then there's less for them to unpack when they see a therapist, because that's a difficult one. However, that situation also triggered the thought of, how is that kid going to then grow up, if that makes sense? Because now for them they're humid, right? I'm not predicting this child, but like in that circumstance, it's giving that child probably going to grow up without that whole I have to do something, or I have to overperform, or I need to be grown about it and self-handle, do it myself. So check myself for the monsters under my bed, because no one's gonna check for me, no one's gonna support me. If I say there's monsters under my bed, all anyone's gonna say is you're crazy, or it's in your hand. No one's really gonna support me just because I said something. Humor your inner child. They're tied in a bit to the praise and attention trap. Sorry. These little moth things that look for light irritate me, because now when I'm using these lights, they are hello, of which I'm oh, stay outside. But anyway, carrying on. I want to take a bit of a slow moment just to breathe a little emotionally. Hopefully, this episode has maybe brought out something for you in you, even if it's foggy or an unfinished thought. That's okay. That's actually quite lovely. I'd be happy to know that I kind of triggered a thought. A good one though. Yeah. Because being episode 1, I'm still trying to figure myself out. If you're still here, thank you. Anyway, again, if this brought up something for you, whether it's foggy or unfinished or even a little bit murky, that's okay. Sometimes, our inner child, not even sometimes, a lot of the times our inner child doesn't speak in clear, distinct memories. I was born a girl, I'm still a girl. Thank you. But yeah, she, in my case, she speaks in patterns, in flinches. That's how I identify her. In why I cry over little things that actually aren't little at all emotionally when you look at it with a deeper lens, and just asking, the question, what did I crave, is enough to actually crack open that door. Because half the time you're not broken for needing softness, or you're not fragile for needing to be handled with care. Yeah, you're brave even for noticing it. It's a point of bravery, and it might sound like I'm zagging for those that's Zim slang for exaggerating. It might sound like I'm zagging, but that is true. And now I would like to know from you, what did your younger self crave that you still do? It doesn't have to be a whole think piece or novel, but you can even DM me one word. Our handle on Instagram is at thisiswhyijournal. Just let me know. Let's have a chat. You can comment under the prompt post for this one a sentence, or even if your answer is soft and silly, hugs or someone to play Barbies with, it's still valid. Maybe your answer on the other hand is deep and heavy, validation or protection. It's all valid, because everyone's response matters. We all go through things differently, and process differently. My goodness. Yeah, maybe for you it's you crave protection because you were the one always protecting others, no one protected you. That's something that lives with me. heavily because I've heard someone say it. Or like your inner child just wanted to laugh, but everything felt so serious, like in the home. Now I chase joy like it's oxygen. That's another quote I heard live. So I'd want to know from you, like, what's something your inner child crave that you still do, and carrying on. Affirmations. Don't cringe. Don't you dare cringe. We're here. Let's realize something. In adulthood, you are allowed to give yourself what you didn't receive as a child. Pause there. Let that energy settle and let the ache soften. Let your nervous system exhale. And we can say it again. Whether you say it out loud, in your head, we can just say it together. You are allowed to give yourself what you didn't receive. Again, but personified. I am allowed to give myself what I didn't receive. Not just surface level things like hugs or snacks or affirmations you saw in a Pinterest quote. If that's it for you, that's actually fine. But there are a lot of us who will hide behind the surface level ones, ignoring the ones about attention, encouragement, gentle correction, structure, safety, being told, I see you, without needing to perform first. Like you're allowed to give yourself consistency instead of chaos, warmth instead of cold shoulders, and like support instead of shame. It can feel foreign. And even if it feels foreign, if it feels like fake at first, especially if you're taught you how to earn love by being easy, quiet, chill, or like self-sacrificing, even in those cases, you can still give it to yourself. It's going to feel weird. TBH. And to the you who still thinks you're too much, let's chat. Maybe you grew up believing like love had to be earned. That being emotional made you annoying, that needing comfort made you clingy, that asking for help made you weak. Maybe you learned to be low maintenance to avoid abandonment, to water yourself down so no one could say you were too much. You are not and were not too much. You're not dramatic. You are not overreacting. You're finally reacting to what you spent years trying to numb. When we look at it from today's lens, you're thawing. You're reclaiming your softness. And that's not weakness. That's power. Reparenting, and it takes a lot, and just remember this, like, for those who are on their real hot girl shit type shit, crying doesn't cancel your hot girl membership. It upgrades you to VIP, because hot girls go to therapy, hot girls journal, hot girls set boundaries and reparent themselves with pride. Hot girls acknowledge their inner children and how their inner children became their adult selves. Hot girls don't shy away from digging deep into their lives, So, yeah, you're doing it. To quote Megan Thee Stallion, real hot girl shit. Carrying on. This is episode 1, so I don't have any write-ins. But if you do have something you'd like to share in like a longer format, we do have an email, thisiswhyijournal @gmail.com. You can either like sit with the prompt, what did your younger self crave that you still do, and just vent. You can feel free to use our emails or our DMs as like a diary if you need. It's a very safe space, judgment-free zone, and I will never reveal your identity. That's anonymous, because at the end of the day, why am I putting your business out there? You need that safe space. Do you know what I'm saying? I think we've hit an hour now. That's actually so weird. I didn't think I would actually get here. Let's close up recap. Yeah. Let's take a deep breath. I know that the sounds are dramatic, but like you have to hear that I'm breathing. This episode was meant to be soft launching our inner children. You know, reparenting, dissecting our grief, dissecting our desire to be seen, held, heard, chosen. And by listening, even if just listening, you showed up for it today. That's huge. I'm proud of you, Spooky, Sweetie, Chandra-swami, my bonzo nguruve. I am so sorry, Shona is just such a funny language. I love my language. Sure. Anyway, now like that bedtime routine I mentioned, let's recap. Like a bedtime story, because I went through quite a lot, and we can just recap it. We spoke about today what reparenting means, not just in the aesthetic form, but in the raw form, in the daily work of giving yourself what was missing. Why journaling isn't just a self-care trend, but a radical way to rewrite your past with compassion, and the way childhood wounds sneak into adult behavior. Teddy bear juice trauma. Then we bring up Barbie, so how like pop culture is sometimes the therapy we actually didn't know we needed, because it triggers us to think about ourselves in relation to the topic at hand. Most importantly though, we remind ourselves and each other that you don't have to be a perfect parent to your inner child. Clock it. You just have to stop abandoning her when she's crying for you. The next episode, just to let you get a little bit teaser, because I have uploaded 5 episodes, called Hot Girls Don't Cry Until They Do. And it's just about like not glamorizing emotional detachment. We're unlearning the idea that silence equals strength. And I'll be gently dragging myself again through every emotion like I once apologized for. And if you ever said, sorry, I'm just being emotional, or it's fine, it's not a big deal, I'm just I crying in front of people, then the next episode is for you. Thank you so much. I hope you like it, and I hope you stick around and we grow together and glow together. Love and light to you. Mwah. I'm not gonna lie, I really want juice right now.